My name is Noah. If you had asked me a year ago what I thought of my marriage, I would have told you it was solid. Not perfect, because no marriage is, but solid. We had a rhythm. We shared a mortgage, laughed at the same shows, split groceries, celebrated birthdays with homemade carrot cake, and danced in the kitchen on Fridays with wine. She was the kind of woman who had her calendar color-coded and her gym shoes lined up by the door. Grace was structure, predictability. At least that's who I thought I married. But the truth is, most stories like this don't start with chaos. They don't begin with someone getting caught red-handed or a stranger sending a screech *T. They start with a whisper, a flicker, a shift so small you almost convince yourself you imagined it. For me, it was one random Saturday evening in Austin, the kind of day that didn't ask to be remembered. I was sitting at my desk, sorting through a pile of bills and receipts, trying to make sense of our bank statements and wondering why the water bill had suddenly jumped again. Grace had just left for what she said was a hot yoga double session. That wasn't unusual. She had picked up a routine of going 2 or 3 times a week lately, something about centering her energy before Q4 at work. Her gym bag sat slouched on the floor near the chair. I nudged it aside with my foot to make room, and that's when something slipped out from the side pocket. A folded white envelope. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who snoops. I wasn't digging. This thing just fell out, unprovoked, like it wanted to be found. Curious, I picked it up. The envelope was unsealed, wrinkled from being stuffed inside her bag. Inside were 2 breakfast for 2 vouchers from a place called the Desert Star Inn. A worn, plastic room key clattered to the desk. A parking stub followed, stamped with a date and time. Thursday night, 6:47 p.m. I remember staring at it, doing that math in my head. That was the night she said she was doing back-to-back yoga and meeting a coworker afterward for a protein bowl. She'd come home claiming traffic had been hell, tossed off her sneakers, and said the studio ran out of towels. But now, in my hand, I held a key to a room and a breakfast voucher for 2. Not 1. A part of me wanted to believe there was some innocent explanation. Maybe she booked a retreat ahead of time? Maybe it was a surprise she hadn't told me about yet? But then I caught the scent. The strap of her bag smelled strongly of cologne. Not just a faint trace like someone brushing past you. This was layered, heavy, spiced, musky, masculine. It hit me the second I brought it to my nose, and the worst part was how unfamiliar it was. I wear sandalwood. Subtle. This was something else entirely, sharp, like the kind worn to clubs and late dinners, not yoga. I just sat there for a while, staring at the contents, the room getting quieter by the second. The walls felt tighter. The little things started flashing through my head. The changes I'd brushed off the past few weeks. Her new workouts, her longer showers, how her phone was suddenly always face down. I placed everything back exactly the way I found it. Envelope, vouchers, stub, key. All tucked back into the side pocket, like nothing happened. I sat down again, though the numbers on the bank statements no longer made sense to me. My heart was pounding. 30 minutes later, the front door opened. She walked in, ponytail neat, leggings immaculate, holding a bright green smoothie in one hand and her keys in the other. "Hey, babe," she called casually, dropping her bag with a thud right by the couch. Studio was packed tonight. They didn't even have enough mats. I turned in my chair, watching her as she moved around the living room like it was a stage. She went straight to the laundry room and tossed in a load that didn't need doing. We both knew those clothes were clean. Then she started organizing a shelf in the pantry, something she hadn't touched in months. Next came wiping down the counters, opening the fridge, rearranging the Tupperware. Not once did she sit down. Not once did she make eye contact for longer than 2 seconds. She was filling the room with motion, with noise, like a magician's sleight of hand. Distract, divert, perform. "Want anything for dinner?" she asked from the kitchen, pulling out a head of lettuce like she was auditioning for a cooking show. I shook my head. "I'm good." "Sure? I can make that chickpea salad you like." I said I'm good. She paused just long enough to blink, then went back to rummaging through the fridge. There was something manic about it, not quite frantic but staged, like she was acting out the part of wife on a normal night, hitting all the beats. It was too much. Too loud. Too choreographed. This wasn't guilt. Guilt is quiet. Guilt tries to disappear. This was deflection. The exaggerated performance of someone who thinks they've outsmarted the room but suspects they've missed a line in the script. Later that night, as we lay in bed, her scrolling through her phone, me staring at the ceiling, I could feel the space between us grow heavier. She turned to me, smiled like everything was fine, and said, "Don't forget we've got brunch with Evan and Melissa tomorrow." I nodded, pretending to care. But inside, a clock had started ticking. The card, the vouchers, the key, the scent. That wasn't paranoia. That wasn't projection. That was something real. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I was standing on the outside of a life I helped build. Looking in through a window, watching her rehearse lines I hadn't written. You don't notice the lies at first. That's the thing about hindsight. It's not just 20/20ths. It's cruel. It takes everything you dismissed in the moment and strings it together like a horror reel you're forced to rewatch frame by frame. After that Saturday night, after the envelope and the scent of someone else, I couldn't stop seeing things. Not new things, things that had already happened, but I had explained them away. Things that made sense before I knew what to look for. Now, they were glaring. Started small. Grace and I used to have location sharing on by default. Not because we were tracking each other. Just convenience. Pick me up here. I'm on my way. Grab milk if you're near the store. It was routine. One day, hers disappeared. I asked once. Must have been an update. "I'll fix it later," she said, not even looking up from her laptop. She never did. Then it was the read receipts. Turned off. Suddenly, text sat delivered, unread for hours. Before I'd get a ping back in seconds. On it? Or be home soon. Or even just a heart emoji. Now it was silence followed by generic replies. Delayed. Disconnected. New passwords followed. We used to share them, streaming services, phone backups, calendar accounts. One by one, they changed. I only noticed when I tried logging into the calendar and got an incorrect password message. She said she had to update it for security at work. But the shared calendar didn't feel very shared anymore. Whole blocks of time started disappearing. Weeks she used to block out. Training seminar, off-site team retreat, Q3 prep, were blank. Like her life had been redacted. I didn't want to be the guy who snoops. I still believed that trust mattered. That maybe she was stressed. Or maybe I was imagining it. That's what you tell yourself when you're not ready for the truth. You give it prettier names. Stress, exhaustion, burnout. But her workouts became a ritual. She left in expensive activewear, hair pulled into an artfully casual bun, but returned untouched. No sweat, no flushed cheeks, hair still perfectly smooth. Once, she walked in smelling like a fresh application of perfume. Perfume after yoga? Come on. And the perfume wasn't hers. Or at least not the one I knew. Grace had worn the same scent for years. Something subtle and floral. This was stronger, richer. A scent I'd never smelled before, clinging to her wrists like an afterthought. Then there were the bank statements. I didn't comb through them obsessively, not at first, but a few charges caught my eye. Midday withdrawals. Upscale coffee spots in the middle of downtown. Lunches at boutique bistros near the financial district. But her office was nowhere near there. One time, I asked her, casual as I could, "How was that meeting at Midtown Plaza?" She blinked. "What meeting?" "The one Thursday. You said." "Oh," she interrupted. "Yeah, that got rescheduled. I stayed late at the office instead." But the receipt said 5:23 p.m. for 2 entrees and a shared dessert. I didn't push. I just smiled and nodded like I hadn't seen anything. That's the thing, once you suspect something, every answer becomes a test. And the more they pretend, the more it confirms what you already know. Passenger seats in her car were always shifted forward. Like someone shorter had been sitting there. The mirrors were angled down. I'd adjust them, and 2 days later, they'd be off again. I asked once, joking, "You been giving rides to hobbits?" She laughed, too loud, then changed the subject. I started finding hotel shampoos in the bathroom cabinet. Tiny, unlabeled bottles. Not from any place we'd stayed at. I knew the brands. Desert Star was one of them. Others I didn't recognize. She claimed they were from gift bags at conferences. And maybe they were. But how many gift bags does a person need? Then came the photos. Grace had always been big on social media. Perfectly filtered sh*ts of cocktails, yoga mats, city views from rooftop bars. I'd scroll through her posts like everyone else. Admiring, liking, sometimes commenting dumb things like, "Save me a sip?" or "Missed the invite, huh?" Lately, I wasn't in the pictures. Not just missing from the frame, missing from the narrative. No tags, no references, no date night with the hubby. Her smiles looked effortless. Her captions were airy. So lucky, night like no other, best kind of sunset. I started checking metadata. One photo, just her in front of a riverfront backdrop, was posted the same night she said she was at an office dinner in Round Rock. But the GPS coordinates? San Marcos, less than a mile from the Desert Star Inn. I stared at that file on my laptop for an hour. The sun in the photo had already dipped past the horizon, casting soft lavender hues across her face. She looked happy, radiant even. I hadn't seen that smile in months. After that, I couldn't stop collecting pieces. I became a quiet archaeologist of my own marriage, digging through the ruins for clues. One day, I opened her glove box to find a pack of mints and a receipt for a diner off the I-35 exit, time-stamped late at night. She had told me she was working late that day. The receipt had 2 meals. Then there were the voice notes. Grace had started using a new app to track ideas. Little recordings, she said, were reminders for herself. She didn't hide the app, but she never talked about it either. I played a few. Most were harmless. Grocery lists, random to-dos. But one of them was different. Her voice was softer, playful. I couldn't hear the other person, but her responses told me enough. "I missed you too," she said, followed by laughter. "No, I'm not wearing it today. I said only for you, remember?" Click. I don't even know what it was. Lingerie, maybe. Perfume. Piece of jewelry. I didn't need to know. That 5-second clip did more damage than any full confession. It's funny. We always think we want the truth until we get it. Then we start wishing for the lies again. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't ready to force it into the open. Instead, I kept collecting. Each detail like a brick in a wall I was building between us. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. She still came home with the same routine, humming while she unpacked, scrolling through her phone with a distant smile, asking how my day was like she already knew the answer. And every night, we'd lay side by side, skin barely touching, 2 strangers rehearsing in *Macy. I wanted to reach for her, to ask her to tell me everything, even if it hurt. But every time I opened my mouth, I saw her turning it into a lie, and I couldn't bear to watch that happen. Not yet. So I stayed silent, and she stayed smiling. And the marriage we'd built, one brick at a time, began quietly, methodically to crumble. Up until that point, everything I had was circumstantial. Suspicious. Compelling, maybe, but deniable. Grace could explain away the receipts, the perfume, the missing time, the adjusted car seats. If I confronted her with it all, she'd dodge, redirect, maybe even cry. She was good at that, rerouting conversations before the destination. And maybe that's why I didn't confront her right away. I wasn't just afraid of hearing her lie. I was afraid she might be convincing enough that I'd believe her. So instead, I decided to stop guessing. I ordered a GPS tracker online. Not the kind that sticks out. This one was small, magnetic, no bigger than a box of matches. I hid it in a stitched inner seam of the bag she always carried to yoga, the one with the envelope, the scent, and the room key. It was a bag she never left behind. Like a prop in a play she couldn't perform without. The first few days, nothing happened. The app on my phone showed her location bouncing between home, the gym, the occasional market. I told myself maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe things really were explainable. Then Thursday came. She told me she had a late strategy session with her department head. Something about quarterly planning. She packed the gym bag, put on that same fitted jacket she always wore when she wanted to look professional but a little flirty, and kissed my cheek. "Don't wait up," she said, casual as air. "I might be late." An hour later, the tracker pinged, Desert Star Inn. Again. Same location as the voucher. Same place from the receipt. Same road off the interstate, flanked by an old gas station and a shuttered diner. She stayed there for 3 hours. She returned home just past 10 p.m. Hair pulled into a loose bun, smelling of shampoo she didn't leave the house wearing. No makeup, no visible emotion, just tired. She called out from the hallway. "They ordered in Thai food. I'm still stuffed. You eat?" "Yeah," I said. "Pasta. Leftovers okay tomorrow?" "Sure." She smiled, kissed my head, and walked to the bedroom. In the silence that followed, I listened to the soft thuds of her makeup bag hitting the bathroom counter and the sound of the shower running. I opened the tracker app again. The pin still sat on the Desert Star Inn, time-stamped from earlier. It hadn't moved. It didn't need to. I had what I needed: movement, timestamps, location. But I still didn't have a face. So I hired one. The private investigator's name was Tarrant. Clean-cut, mid-50s, and wore a suit like it was armor. I met him at a sandwich shop halfway between our house and his office. I laid it all out: the receipts, the missing hours, the room key, the tracker pings. I didn't dramatize. I didn't speculate. Just facts. Cold, clean, organized. He didn't flinch. "You want confirmation?" he said, flipping through a manila folder. "I want the truth," I replied. "Same thing," he nodded. "I'll be discreet." He was. Within days, he had eyes on her. She followed a pattern. Wednesdays and Thursdays, the gym bag came with her. She left the house around 5:30, told me she was headed to yoga or a team meeting, and disappeared for 3 hours. The tracker confirmed every move. The investigator filled in the rest. Room 203, Desert Star Inn. Always the same. Tarrant sent me the photos in an encrypted folder. The first image hit like a truck. Grace stepping out of her car, her face relaxed, laughing at something. Her body language was soft, familiar in a way she hadn't been with me in months. The man beside her was tall, lean, maybe early 40s. Dark hair, pressed shirt, slacks, and that smug, easy confidence that made me hate him instantly. Not just for what he was doing, but for how casual he looked doing it. In the second photo, he held the door open for her. His hand lingered at the small of her back. She leaned into it. In the third, they entered room 203. An hour later, a fourth photo showed them stepping back out. Her hair was tied up. His shirt was untucked. Both were smiling. Another day, another visit, another set of photos. Same man, same room, same ending. Over the next 2 weeks, Tarrant documented everything. He compiled a report with timestamps, geotags, photographs, even receipts he retrieved from the trash outside the room, 2 bottles of water, a cheap bottle of red wine, and a takeout container from the same Thai place Grace claimed to eat at with coworkers. She wasn't working late. She wasn't doing yoga. She was cheating. Systematically. Repeatedly. With intention. And now it wasn't suspicion anymore. It was proof. Undeniable. I stared at the folder for hours that night. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just stared. You expect heartbreak to come like thunder. Loud, brutal, messy. But for me, it arrived like fog. Slow, quiet, suffocating. I kept asking myself, why him? Why not tell me? Why build a second life instead of fixing the first? But I already knew the answer. Because this wasn't about fixing anything. It was about escape. About thrill. About power. And somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being part of her story. I was just the backdrop. She didn't know I knew. That night, she curled into bed beside me like nothing had changed. Her hand brushed against mine under the blanket. She whispered something about how cold the office had been. I said nothing. She fell asleep within minutes. I laid there for hours, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Not because I didn't know what to do next, because now I finally did. Once the denial was gone, all that remained was data. I don't know what part of me kicked in, whether it was self-preservation, vengeance, or just the part of me that needed control. But the moment I accepted what Grace was doing, I started treating it like a case file, like a project, something I could map, build, dissect. Grief took a backseat to order. I started an archive. Not a folder, not a collection. An archive. That word mattered. It made it feel real, permanent. Something I could structure into layers, digital and physical, sorted and categorized so that no one, especially her, could ever accuse me of guessing again. The first layer was financial. I logged every out-of-place transaction, pulled our bank statements for the past 12 months and created a color-coded spreadsheet. Green for shared expenses, yellow for unexplained, red for incriminating. And red showed up far more than I expected. I found a pattern. Thursdays and Wednesdays, mostly. Charges from diners, coffee shops, boutique restaurants in neighborhoods we never visited together. She always paid in cash for the motel. I could tell because there were frequent same-day ATM withdrawals at a machine just down the block from the Desert Star. $80 here, $120 there. I matched them to the GPS pings and investigator photos. It lined up perfectly. Some of the red charges came from places I used to love. Places we used to go on date nights. She'd recycled the memories with someone else, like a plagiarist rewriting old sentences. Next came the digital evidence. I went back through the metadata from her social media posts. I started saving images, not just the ones she shared publicly, but anything I could find in our cloud photo folder. She must have forgotten it was still connected. There were selfies she never posted. Ones taken in dim rooms with beige walls and motel bedding in the background. Photos of coffee mugs with timestamps that didn't match her work schedule. Her smile was different in them. A little more relaxed. A little less mine. I cross-referenced everything. Time, location, excuse. A photo by the river posted on a Saturday she claimed to be at a conference. Another one, her nails freshly done. But she told me she skipped the salon that week because of a tight budget. Even the calendar became a crime scene. I recovered deleted entries using a simple sync tool. Entries she had wiped clean weeks before. Meetings that vanished. Workout blocks that never had a gym check-in to match. Dinner plans that I realized now were never meant for me. I saved *TS. Created folders within folders. One for photos. One for receipts. One for GPS logs. One for the investigator's reports. Each was named by date and tagged with a small note. Claimed to be in yoga. Was at motel. Said, strategy session. See room 203. The deeper I went, the more it became impossible to dismiss. Then came the physical evidence. I started checking her car more often, not out of curiosity but out of habit. In the glove box, I found crumpled napkins from restaurants we'd never been to. Mints with wrappers from a brand I didn't buy. A valet stub tucked beneath the seat. Desert Star in again. Dated just 2 weeks prior. She hadn't even bothered to hide it well. Maybe she thought I wouldn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. The trunk had a towel rolled up. Not the gym kind. The kind motels offer to guests. Thin. Rough. Marked with faint reddish-pink makeup stains that weren't from her usual palette. I didn't ask her about it. I just added it to the archive, photographed, dated, and bagged. At home, I started noticing her habits changing in real time. She'd shower the second she walked in, never used to. She never left her phone unattended anymore, even when going to the bathroom. She started locking the bedroom door when she changed, which she'd never done before, not in 10 years. I took notes on all of it. One night, while taking out the trash, I found a box wedged deep in the kitchen bin. One I hadn't thrown away. It was from a prepaid burner phone. I dug it out, hands shaking, and pulled it apart. The SIM was gone. The device itself I never found. But the box alone told me what I needed to know. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning to get away with it. The investigator, Tarrant, helped me finish the picture. He had identified the man. His name was Tyler Morgan. 42. Divorced. Financial executive at a private consulting firm. I looked him up. The guy gave keynote speeches at networking events, posed for hedge*TS with crossed arms and fake humility. Sleek LinkedIn profile. The kind of man who always smiles with his mouth closed. But the twist? His company had recently contracted with Grace's department. That meant she hadn't just crossed a marital line. She'd blurred a professional one, too. I added it to the archive. I started calling the whole thing the Double Life Project in my private notes. It was my way of coping. I think naming it made it less monstrous. It gave me the illusion of control. Still, part of me hoped she'd notice. That she'd see the way I was pulling away. That she'd confess or slip up, or just break down and tell me the truth. She didn't. She became better at pretending. Her smiles were sharper. Her compliments felt scripted. "You've been so patient lately," she said once, kissing my cheek. "I feel like we're finally syncing again." I stared at her, wondering if she really believed that, or if she just thought I was too dumb to catch on. Maybe she needed to believe I was blind. Maybe that was the only way she could look me in the eye every day. So I let her believe it. While she rehearsed her life, I prepared for the exit. There comes a moment in every unraveling when emotion gives way to strategy. For me, that moment came one quiet Tuesday morning as Grace hummed in the kitchen, slicing strawberries like it was any other day. She was wearing a pale blue sweater I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. The same one she once wore when we slow danced barefoot in our living room. Now, it looked like a costume, like she was playing a part she no longer believed in. I stared at her from across the counter, sipping lukewarm coffee, and I realized I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't confused. I wasn't waiting for her to confess or cry or explain. I was ready to move. So I found an attorney. Her name was Evelyn Morse, recommended by a friend who described her as sharp as a scalpel and twice as precise. Her office was in a quiet brick building downtown, the kind you'd never notice unless you were looking for it. Clean, unassuming. Like the truth, I guess. I walked in with a USB drive and a manila envelope containing a selection from my archive. Not everything, just enough to make the point clear. She barely blinked as she flipped through the evidence. When she reached the surveillance photo of Grace and Tyler entering the motel room together, she nodded once, like a surgeon reviewing x-rays before an operation. "You've done your homework," she said, sliding the folder shut. "That's good. This won't be clean, but we can make it quick." She laid out the next steps in calm, clinical detail: what to copy, what to secure, what to prepare for. There was no hand-holding, no sympathetic sighs, just a checklist. "Step 1, she said. Lock down your financial exposure. Start by moving half, no more, of the joint funds into an individual account. Document the exact amount. **T everything." I nodded, already ahead of her. I had opened a solo account 2 weeks earlier under a name variation. N.P. Callahan instead of Noah Paul Callahan. Subtle, but enough to avoid joint account pings. "Step 2, she continued. Gather originals or duplicates of any marital assets. House deed, car titles, retirement accounts. Don't remove them from your home. Just copy, scan, encrypt if possible." I told her I'd started scanning documents the week prior, hidden inside a folder labeled Tax Stuff 2019. Grace hadn't asked about it. I doubted she even noticed the drawer was unlocked. "Step 3, she said, pausing. Start preparing your exit plan. Quietly, emotionally, logistically. Don't confront her yet. That's the last move, not the first." I didn't ask how many times she'd given this talk before. I already knew. That night, I began duplicating my archive across multiple drives, 2 physical USBs, and 1 encrypted cloud backup with double authentication. I kept 1 USB in my work desk, another in a lockbox at a friend's apartment. I didn't trust anything in the house anymore. I also started looking for a second place. Not to move out just yet, but to have ready. A studio, preferably furnished, not too far from my job. I told the realtor I needed a place to clear my head. She didn't ask more. Within a week, I had a lease signed. 1 bedroom, downtown, short-term. Clean, minimalist. No memories. Meanwhile, Grace carried on like nothing was wrong. She complimented my cooking, laughed at reruns of sitcoms we used to love, started asking if I wanted to take a weekend trip. Just us, she said. To reset. I watched her performance with morbid fascination. She was trying to rekindle a fire she'd quietly smothered months ago. And all the while, she was still seeing him. Tarrant confirmed it. The visits to the Desert Star had shifted from Thursdays to Mondays. New routine. Same betrayal. Same motel room. But then, something else happened. Tarrant called me one morning with a tone I hadn't heard before. Tense. Clipped. You need to know something, he said. The man, Tyler Morgan, he's not just some executive. He's the senior acquisitions lead for Pierce and Kale Financial. And Pierce and Kale holds several contracts with your wife's department, including budget oversight. That landed like a hammer. Is that conflict of interest? Worse, he said. If they're romantically involved and she's approving contracts or proposals connected to his team, that's potentially a breach. At best, unethical. At worst, actionable. He offered to dig deeper. I said yes. Within a few days, he found emails between Grace and Tyler, messages not sent from her work address, but from a private, encrypted one. They discussed timelines, funding cycles, project approvals. She'd been advising him, smoothing his proposals through the cracks. Suddenly, this wasn't just personal anymore. It was professional misconduct. I brought the findings to Evelyn. Her eyebrows rose slightly as she scanned the new documents. This changes the leverage, she said simply. If we go to court and her employer finds out about this, it could affect her job, reputation, even legal standing. She'll want to settle fast. Good, I said, but she looked at me. Don't we *p*nice it just to hurt her. Use it to protect yourself. That's the difference. I understood. This wasn't about revenge. It was about shielding the part of my life she hadn't broken yet. So I waited. I played my part. I kept up appearances. We went to dinners with friends. She texted me midday heart emojis. We held hands in public. And inside, I was already gone. I started shifting things out of our home slowly. A few clothes, my tools, important documents. I told her I was decluttering. She thanked me for finally getting into minimalism. One night, while she was out meeting a friend from yoga, I stood in the middle of our living room and looked around. The house was spotless. The air smelled like sandalwood candles. A wedding photo sat on the mantel, me in a navy suit, her in a lace gown, her eyes locked onto mine like she couldn't imagine anyone else in the world. I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned it face down, not out of anger, out of mercy, because I no longer recognized the woman in that photo. And I didn't want her watching what came next. At our high school reunion, Grace walked in glowing, pretending perfection. During a toast, someone joked about her vanishing ex. Then, on the monitors, an ad flashed, her image, unmistakable in a nightlife promo. The bracelet, the birthmark, it was her. Whispers filled the room. She wasn't just cheating. She was leading a second life. And in that moment, the lie shattered publicly, permanently. Her world unraveled fast. Colleagues ghosted her. Clients backed out. And the rumors flew. My lawyer filed the settlement, airtight with evidence. I left a binder on the kitchen table, photos, receipts, divorce papers. No fights, no begging. Just the facts. I moved into my studio, the final door shut behind me. She had built her betrayal in silence. I answered with quiet truth.